Hello everyone, I'm realBluTV, and this is going to be the second recap video for the CMG, yes that's right, the Checkmate Gaming $8,000 tournament qualifiers. Is the second qualifier has now been completed, and we saw some great teams and some great matches, and I know you guys don't want to hear me talk about anything else, so let's hop right into it and get started with some of the breakdowns on this bracket. All right, so easily this bracket was pretty exciting to say the least. I mean, let's go ahead. I think it was about 65 teams. Yeah, so 64 teams, 61 actually that showed up. So this was looking really good. I mean, remember, this is free to enter, and it's for a chance to get into the $8,000 showdown tournament, which is double elimination on December 19th and 20th. So if you haven't signed up yet, don't worry, you have 6 more qualifying tournaments to have a chance with. But let's take a look. In round 1, we had some really good matchups. If we take a look at the first one, we had Unlucky versus Forcible Dolphin, 7290. That's one of those names that CMG generates for you. But on that team, we talked about them in the last video. You know, Dez, Dethroner, Roman, T-Mac. Those are 4 Paladins players. 2 of them that played pretty well on console, being Roman and Dez. And then we have Dethroner and T-Mac. You know, T-Mac went through the PC circuit along with Dethroner. Dethroner actually played in the Pro League for that with the Pittsburgh Knights. And you have T-Mac, who was playing with some really strong minor league teams at the time, and possibly could have given a shot at the Pro League if he would have kept playing. But that was a good team in the first bracket. They made top 16. This time around, though, they have a really tough matchup in the first round, which they ended up losing to with Unlucky. That would be Hoppies, Phil Wins Bigley, Abba Smalls, and Scott is Talented. And this is one of those teams that we talked about in the last video as well, being that they have played in a bunch of these CMGs and they've been there continuously. I know Phil Wins Bigley has won 1 or 2 of those. As you can see from his winnings, it wasn't really one of those big winnings, but still 160 and 89 through Roco right now. He's got 2 bronze trophies. So this is one of those teams that has continuously showed up and has been grinding the CMG circuit. So Unlucky versus Forcible Dolphin. Of course, as a fan and viewer, I would have favored Forcible Dolphin, but as an analyst and just someone who's watching this to kind of learn as much as I can, it could have went either way, and it ended up going in favor of Unlucky. So that was one of those first round matchups that were pretty I enjoyed watching it. The second first round matchup that I was keeping an eye on was Forcible Snail, again one of those CMG generated names, with ProjectNM. And stick with us, ProjectNM, they made it all the way through the bracket. They ended up winning this qualifying tournament, so of course they will be seen winning against Forcible Snail. And what's really interesting about Forcible Snail is that Who's That A is on the team, Snows is on the team. I know Snows is a pretty strong player as of lately. We have Nikki Tyne, who I haven't seen that much of, but the one I really want to clue in here is Locked In Lossy. You know, because his name says Locked In right there. He was originally on the Locked In Roco team, and we talked about them in our last video too. You know, Paid Boy no longer on Locked In. Donnie G still there. Now Lossy is not there as well. So Locked In Roco team making a lot of roster adjustments, and they're kind of falling out of being one of those top teams, which they were early on in the comp scene here in the CMG type thing. So I don't know if Lossy will be able to find some more success with another team. I'm pretty sure this was a pickup team coming into this, but it's still some strong players, and they were able to put up a couple rounds, I believe, against ProjectNM. But when you have picks on the sniper on the other side, Note, Ink, and Saint all coming at you, it's really rough, and we found that out from a lot of teams that had to go up against ProjectNM. Also in the first round, this was probably the biggest match of the first round. Status Quo versus F4L. And Status Quo, again, is that team with Flamesword who came from Halo. Q is on that team as well. And I watched all of this match, and it was awesome to watch these guys clash. And there was a good game too where Status Quo, I believe, was down, I think maybe 5-2 or 6-2, and they came back and they won that game. So that was very interesting. They pushed it into a game 3. Game 3, they kind of fell apart again, and they ended up losing to the pickup squad, which might just go on to be a solidified squad. This was their first time playing together, and that was F4L with Moho, Holiday, Elvin and Truancy, and I talked about Truancy in the past. I saw him playing with the Roco boys, which are also known as Morningstar, which is the team that made it to the grand finals in this second qualifier and ended up losing against ProjectNM, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Truancy, you know, he was seen playing with that team, and I thought he worked well with that team, but he didn't end up staying with them. They picked up Net J, and then Truancy now finally found here with 3 other good players. Moho, one of the players that was on the original no comp team that was with Enzo, Gronky, and Nash, and now we see Gronky and Nash on tier 1. I don't know where Enzo is. I don't know if we'll see him on a team in the future. There are 6 more qualifiers, so he has a chance to get on a team, and if someone's looking for a good player, I mean, Enzo is available among some other great ones that are out there as well. But Holiday, he played very, very well, and I was pretty impressed with his Ronin. He didn't really play it as the lurker. He was kind of playing as more defensively, even when they were on the attack. So it was good to see some Ronin play, but also some different Ronin play from what we're used to seeing. Elvin. This team actually didn't want to play Fixer. They didn't play Fixer for most of the time through the bracket until they got to those semifinals and those grand finals where they had to play the Fixer. And the Fixer went to Elvin. And that was one of my questions during this tournament. Who's going to play the Fixer if they are forced to play the Fixer? And it turns out Elvin will be that player. But he's also the guy who's playing the trench for them. He's playing He's also playing the Anvil. So he's mainly that support player. That's kind of what you call that trench and that Anvil. They're the bomb carriers primarily. So that'll be Elvin. And so a lot of pressure being released onto Elvin. And Moho too, playing the lurker Vi, which was pretty interesting to see, especially when he's trying to hold mid by himself and he lurks across. And he ended up getting some really good picks throughout the entire tournament. So shout out to this team right here, F4L. But there is one thing I want to mention about Status Quo. They did look good, but they looked decent, actually. They didn't look great. They didn't look bad. And at the same time, this is kind of an example. So if any of you out there want to know how not to manage your team during a game, you need to go back into Flamesword's stream and go ahead and watch this matchup, because not Flamesword himself, but 2 other people on the team. I think it was Fearless and Promotion. I don't want to call anyone out, though, but it was kind of hard to watch when they started losing and there was mistakes being made. They're calling each other out on them, which is fine. That's what teammates should do. You should call each other out on your mistakes, but not during the game. And, you know, they're going into, you know, if they lose round 3, they're going into round 4 and they're landing on the ground out of the plane, still arguing about what happened. And if you go back and you look at teams like STK or you look at tier 1 and you listen to their comms while they're playing, if something bad happens or they lose a round because of something, they'll call it out in the plane. But instantly, like with tier 1, you will hear frag out, instantly say, shut up, it's over, we'll talk about it later, let's focus on the next round. I didn't hear that out of Status Quo, and that quite possibly could have been one of the major problems, because they just kept arguing. There was these little nitpicks back and forth, and it was like, oh yeah, that wouldn't happen if we script. Like, guys, cut it out, focus on the next round, get this W. That's all you got to do. Flamesword was trying to do that, but he wasn't as aggressive with it, and I think that somebody on this team needs to step up, become that IGL that tells the rest of the team, hey, we made a mistake. Yes, I don't care if you're wrong, I'm wrong, we're all wrong, no one's wrong. It doesn't matter. Shut up, focus on the next round. That's what needs to be done. And I think that is partly why they weren't able to get the win against F4L. Sometimes it's not all about your skill, and sometimes it is about those comms and the focus of the players. So there's a perfect example for everybody out there. Status Quo themselves. Find a way to get that out of your mind and to keep moving forward. You know? If you fall down walking down the stairs, you don't sit there and cry for 3 hours. You get back up and, you know, you're going to feel it later. But for the time being, you keep going. You keep marching. Next match that was pretty big. I believe this was the second round. Regiment versus All Caps Lock. We saw All Caps Lock do some really good things in the first qualifying tournament. But if you go back in the recap video, once again, Regiment, Entourage, Prefire, Varsity, and or Versatile, excuse me, and Go Loco played pretty well in that first one. I believe there are a bunch of former Call of Duty players. I shouldn't say former. They're probably still trying to play Call of Duty, but they're pretty good players. I've seen Prefire in a couple tournaments for Call of Duty, I believe, if that is who I am thinking of. So this is one of those teams I want to keep my eye on because they are still winning games. They're still doing pretty decent. They went pretty aggressive in this tournament. So I'll be looking forward to watching some more of them. Meanwhile, on the other side, all caps lock, Rome, Liddy, higher, Rays. I talked about in the first tournament, Liddy kind of impressed me a little bit because I knew Rome, DMV coming in watching this team, but I didn't really know who Liddy was or higher or Raysco. Raysco, higher, still not impressing me as much, but Liddy, he's climbing up on the scale a little bit. Rome, of course, one of those good players that I've seen play a bunch of times already. Hopefully he can keep improving to keep all caps lock in the conversation. Next up in the second round, we had another matchup that was pretty interesting for me to watch. It was Scare TKO and ProjectNM. I knew coming in ProjectNM would be a good team, especially in that first round matchup that they had. I mean, again, note, Pix, Ink, and Saint. Saint coming from CSGO, I believe, and Pix on the fixer, and he's just hitting incredible shots. We saw it all throughout the grand finals as well. But for Scare TKO, this is one of those teams where I said in the first video, in the first recap, where's Goxley? He was talking up a storm like he was going to be in this tournament, and he's very active on Twitter, and he keeps trying to promote the community and create these good environments for competitive Roco. But here he is finally, Goxley, and he's playing with some players that I've heard of and have seen play before. Colt being probably the least amount that I've seen out of the three. Bacardi is one of those good players, and apparently he's become a package deal with Goxley. So if you see Goxley, 9 times out of 10 you're going to see Bacardi there, and vice versa. And then we have Gio Royals, which is one of those players that has been grinding as a free agent still, apparently, and he's subbed in for a couple good teams here and there in some other CMG tournaments, and he's gotten himself some good play time, some good screen time. He's got 2 gold trophies and 3 bronze, so he is up there in the amount of time being played. Can he match it with his skill and help lead this team to some victories? We'll have to see. I mean, Scare TKO, they won their first round. I don't remember who it was against specifically, but it was nobody that I would shake an eye at twice. But going up against ProjectNM, that's a tough matchup. So I'm not going to fault them too much for being a last-minute team, most likely, and having to go up against ProjectNM. So hopefully this team keeps scrimming, they keep grinding together, and we don't have to see Goxley or Bacardi going to another team, trying to pick up 2 more people, or see Gio sending out another free agent tweet, because I want to see some people start to grind together, get that chemistry going. This is not all about skill. Remember that. I'm going to say that so many times, all the time, throughout the year, throughout Roco, throughout any game, actually. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Going into the next round, or excuse me, in round 2, there was another matchup. 24-hour team versus Regiment. Again, Regiment, that Call of Duty team. They ended up losing to some people that I'm familiar with outside of Road Company. We got Sat, who is a former world champion in Paladins on controller. We've got Ozone, who has played in Paladins for a long time, has competed. He's been a coach. I believe he was coaching a team in Roco at the very beginning too, but that team kind of fell apart. I believe they had Somtap, who's on a different team now, who didn't show up for this qualifier, but they were in the first qualifier and got a couple wins. You also had the god Karma, and Karma's apparently going back to Splitgate, so the team kind of fell apart. There was another player on that team, Agros too, who's been actively looking for a new team to play with, but Ozone showing up here with Chloe and Grizzy, and I didn't know much about Grizzy. I've seen his name bounce around a few times as well as Chloe's, but I didn't see them actually play myself. But they looked really, really good. I mean, they were playing pretty well together. There was a game where Sat disconnected and it auto-picked him Phantom. They still won that round. They were up 6-0, and then he came back, and they still won that pistol round. So they were looking good even when Sat disconnected. And I'd like to see more of this team. Guessing by the name 24-hour team, I don't know if this is a 100% solidified roster. Judging from that name, it could be a pickup team that they put together in the last 24 hours, obviously, but still a good team, and you went up against some good controller Call of Duty players from what I know. So if you're able to take that win, you take that win. Into the next round, we had Morningstar and Unlucky. They had to play on Lockdown, Factor, and Icarus. And this was looking good. I believe this was a 2-0 as well. Morningstar, which, if you were checking the bracket earlier on, was named Rico Boys. But Domes, Canny, Highlight, NetJ, Again, I didn't know NetJ was going to come in with the squad before the qualifier started, but he has. They played pretty well in the first tournament, but they had a rough bracket. This time around, they make it to the finals. They picked up their play. No matter if they had that rough bracket or not, they put it in their heads that they were going to make this grand finals. They did qualify. They made it to the grand finals. They ended up losing to ProjectNM. But, hey, still good play. They went up against Unlucky with the, Phil Wins Bigley, Hoppies, Abba Smalls, and Sky's Talented. I would project Morningstar to come out of this victorious, which they did. And, before the qualifiers even started, I said, hey, this is a top 4 team. And I actually thought Truancy was going to be on that team. So, regardless, they still helped me, secure my correctness at them being a top 4 team. So, congratulations to them. And then the last match I want to talk about, not so much as, a super hyper match to watch, but I just want to throw it out there and give some love to the Strikeout boys because they played pretty well in the first tournament, and then again they made it into, I believe, the quarterfinals here, which was the round before quarterfinals, I believe. So Locked In Roco, they still made it pretty far with J-Grab, Donnie G, Logical FPS. I've seen that name bounce around a couple times, but I haven't seen him play. Just Trick, same situation with him. So it's interesting. I said, Logical and Just Trick, they're replacing Paid Boy and Lossy. So how can Donnie G and J Gravity help Locked In Roco continue to be as successful as they were early on in the comp scene? Because right now they're starting to fade away and fade out of that picture, and they're not really impressing me as much. Coming into qualifier 1, they were kind of one of those on the bubble teams for me to watch, and now they're kind of falling below that bubble, and I'm not really going to put them on the list for number 3, especially when we have teams like PMP and some other ones out there to look out for to make the grand finals and qualify out of the third bracket. So we'll see what they can do. And Strikeout boys, again, they played pretty well in the first tournament. Blicky, Mango, they were the two that impressed me the most. And I want to see some more of these guys. They made a pretty deep run the first time. Excuse me. They made a pretty deep run the first time. And this second time around, it looks like they might be trying, or the second time around, they made a pretty deep run as well. Not as deep as the first one, but third one might be the charm for them. All right, so let's take a look at the quarterfinals. We had Morningstar go up against 24-Hour Team. I'm guessing Morningstar would have won that, but it was still probably a good matchup. Again, 24-Hour Team being that Ozo team with Chloe and Grizzy. They played pretty well. Sat is on there as well. Stout Mosquito, by the way, is LFL looking for orgs. They played pretty well. They had to go up against Morningstar. And I believe on that roster, it was Magnus, Negligent, Chapo, and Comic Book. Coming into this match, they were asking me who to watch, and I said, well, Neg is an old Gears pro, so I know he's probably going to do well. Chapo, we've seen his name a bunch of times as well, but the guy to look out for would be Magnus, because I think as that Dahlia player, he has to step up, maybe. Or excuse me, he could have not have been the Dahlia player. I could be mistaken there. I saw a lot of people playing Dahlia, so, I lose my mind sometimes. But Magnus is probably that guy that has to step up and help this team win. But it ended up being Comic Book, who was getting some beautiful headshots on Domes, and he was kind of winning that fixer versus fixer battle against Domes, and it was a good thing because they wouldn't have made it as deep into these games with these rounds as they did without that. I mean, Comic Book was going pretty nasty, but the flanks from Highlight were just too much on the Lancer, and NetJ was on the chalk. I think they played on High Castle for the second game, and they pretty much ego pushed them and pushed right into them. There was no trench or anvil on defense for the side of LFO, so they had no trophy systems to stop anything for that B rush, and Morningstar took advantage of that. They would sticky right in there, then they would double sticky in there with a Lancer and a chalk, then they would flashbang, and then they would just EMP. They'd go in there, they'd rush. They left Vi in kitchen by herself so many times and was just getting ego pushed by NetJ, who would pop his ability on chalk and just push into her face. Molly, Vi poison, doesn't matter. She was flashbanged. He's just going to push in there. And after he did that, his other 3 teammates would push Archway and win that fight every single time against a single person too. I don't know what they were thinking. Probably had to double stack Arch or maybe double stack Kitchen, but you got to change some things up. I know Neg was pretty hard on himself on Twitter saying we shouldn't have lost to that team, but hey, you did. Morningstar's a really good team. They're nothing to shake a stick at, and Domes was pretty excited. If you watch the broadcast, he was dancing on it. So shout out to Morningstar for this matchup, because they found the weakness and they took advantage of it and executed it pretty well. Into that next matchup in the quarterfinals, F4L versus PMP, and that was something good to watch. We saw PMP bring out the fixture for K10 Korea, and he did fantastic on it. He wasn't hitting every shot, but he was hitting some crucial shots when they needed to be hit. But when it came down to it, they couldn't get the win. I know the first game they couldn't get the win. It was a 1v1. At the end, it was 6-6, and they lost because the melee came out. I know Zeal was pretty hard struck on that one. That was on the Vice map. And then on the Favelas map, it came down to Moho versus Korea 10 in a 6-6 1v1 to end it. And Korea 10 won that. Moho couldn't get the intel fast enough. He had just got done with another engagement, so he was kind of low health. Korea 10 popped out and got the kill that he needed. So they went to a game 3. It was very exciting to watch, but PMP started to crumble towards the end. And I think that PMP will probably, most likely, if I had to guess, be one of those top 2 teams in the third qualifier. So look out for them. But then heading into the semifinals, we saw ProjectNM beat out F4L. They just played better. They had better utility usage. Moho couldn't get the lurk flanks and couldn't hold the mid as much as he could in the previous rounds. And I mean, Pix was going insane on the sniper. And then again, in the finals, he kind of put Domes in check. At first, Domes was doing some good things for Morningstar, but then again, the battle of the snipers went in favor of Pix, and he played super well. And I was very impressed with Pix on that. And I was also very impressed with Note as well. So I'm looking forward to watching some more of ProjectNM. I think they were the best team in the bracket, and it shows because they won that bracket. Morningstar, still a top 4 team, and they still qualified for the bracket. But again, they've got some things to work on. I mean, all 4 teams that have qualified already still have things to work on, even if you won your bracket. So nonetheless, it was exciting to watch the second qualifier for Checkmate Gaming's $8,000 showdown, and I'm excited to keep watching the rest of them, as there will be 6 more. Don't forget, you can sign up at checkmategaming.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at CMG_Rogue. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at realBluTV with no E in blue. If you liked the video, go ahead and share it. Give me a like, hit that thumbs up button. I usually don't say that at the beginning of my video because I know you guys, I mean, I hate it when I try to watch a YouTube video and someone's just blurting out all these sponsors and doing this. I know you got to do it, but I don't. So you're lucky for that. Love you guys, and keep grinding, you know?